crypto bros make money literally by making money, and they've made over $1 trillion out of thin air. They'll accuse the U.S. government of making money out of thin air. Maybe we do, but we're the U.S. government.
Boom. Yes, surprise, surprise. We are back once again for another pod brought to you by Mr. All-In, aka the $1 Trillion Man, Dr. Evil 10%, aka the People's Champ, myself, Sir Neverlook, aka the Excellence of Execution, and once again for our ESG score, Mrs. No Show, whatever ticks the box to make sure that we're getting that score up. Mrs. No Show, still no show. But this is the show, of course, that probably will get 3 stripes quicker than a creator at Adidas that can put 3 stripes on on a garment, right?
Well, have we got something particularly spicy, or you're just talking about we love getting cancelled?
I don't think we've got anything particularly spicy this week. We got some pretty intense subjects which have been picked out.
Absolutely.
This week, but I suppose the conversation can be drawn this way and that way, can't it?
Yeah, it can.
Especially in this cancel culture ongoing war.
Hey, we could get cancelled any time, so I'm surprised every week that it happens. You know, if the channel gets taken down, every video that was once there gets archived. Yeah, I'm just waiting for it, and then to reclaim our evenings back. But for now, I'm happy to carry on. Or we'll have to, of course, move to a new platform.
Yeah, do you know, actually, when I was looking for stories for this week, because most of our stories, just as a heads up, they're mainly actually fiat-based stories, really. It's like the collapse of fiat. In reality, there's a couple of Bitcoin ones in there, but it's largely just either fiat people talking about Bitcoin or it's fiat stuff. And I realized, I just Googled it then, the Bitcoin conference is this week. It's in 2 days. So Bitcoin 2023 is this week. Starts on the 18th to the 20th. So I'd imagine that all the kind of new news for Bitcoin, everyone's saving it, aren't they? You wouldn't announce a new product or anything new right now, would you? You're gonna wait until you're up on stage in Miami, announcing it to the world's media that we're all listening to go what's new this year. So
of course,
that's probably why we've got a little bit of a slow news week.
Yeah, it makes sense because everything has slowed down the last few weeks. Though one thing which we haven't got on, because I only just read it before the session, was around Ledger and an update which they put on, which they seemed to have rolled back quite quickly, which seemed like it was susceptible to, your keys being shared.
Yeah, we're going to get there.
What's story 2 tonight, yeah?
Oh, is it? I haven't seen you put it on. Sorry, I didn't realise.
Yeah, we can move straight to that if you want.
Oh,
it's an interesting topic for sure. When I was looking through it and the revisions that have gone into it. So as always, for all listeners and viewers, feel free to look in the show notes because all of the links are there. You know, we're bringing you a consolidation of what is Bitcoin news, also that covers fiat news. So click the links and follow. So let's start off there because it's quite scary when reading this, and I'll we'll give you the background, which is initially don't update your ledger because they're suggesting that they can split up your private keys and how they can do that, and so they shouldn't have access. So Ledger have created kind of like a subscription service, and it's a new service which allows for customers to be able to recover and retrieve their Bitcoin in the event that they have lost their seed phrase and recovery phrase by creating a new one. That then goes off to 3 different entities, if I'm following this right. So you will, 2 go off to 2, and then I think you keep the 3rd. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, it depends really. This is meant to be a full recovery, so it's called Ledger Recover. And in their now deleted webpage that they launched, it said, your recovery phrase will be split into 3 encrypted shards and distributed to 3 custodians: Ledger, a crypto custody firm, and CoinCover, and Code Escrow company Escrow Tech. So basically, they're splitting it up. So essentially, what they're saying is, if you lose your keys, you can actually just ring up Ledger or send them an email and go, I've lost my keys. Can I be sent them? And in theory, they're going, yeah, we'll send you our shard. These 2 other companies will send you their shards. You can then put them together, generate your private keys again, and recover the Bitcoin that you would have lost. But why that's so terrifying is, how can they have access to your private keys to split them into shards in the first place via a software update? They're supposed to be, the way that it was pitched was that there's meant to be a separate chip on your ledger that generates the seed phrase. So there's the core software that runs the ledger, but then when you plug it in the first time, it's supposed to call this additional chip to generate your seed phrase, and you can write that down. And then essentially it never really looks at that again. So the core software should not be allowed to communicate with that additional chip for any reason other than when it's generating the key, when it's plugged into a device. What they are saying here, if this is possible, it means there either isn't a separate chip at all, or they can actually talk to the chip whenever they fucking want, which means if they can access your private key and split it into 3, then it means, well, why they don't need to split it into 3, do they? They could just leave it as 1. So Ledger could, in theory, steal your private key. Or in reality, what's worse is the fact that they've said this is possible is now every hacker in the land is going to try and shove updates or try and get an update into Ledger, knowing that you can steal people's private keys remotely from a hardware device, which completely just, they obviously think that what they're doing here is like, oh, this is super user friendly, this is great. But obviously they launched it today and pulled it today. But the update went to people. Some people would have updated their device today to this latest update, but they've already pulled it, and now I don't think the update is even available. But it's terrifying.
It just shows us vulnerabilities then, doesn't it? So
immediately.
So on an unrelated note, what's an alternative to Ledger?
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah. So you've got Cold Card, you've got
Trezor.
Blockstream, you've got Trezor, you've got Blockstream's Jade.
Cold Card, how interesting.
Oh, yeah, like I literally, this scared I only read this literally as I was prepping for the pod.
Yeah, because I didn't realize we'd have it on. Like, I'd read it early evening and not got around to doing anything about it, and I was just like, kind of thought, we'll discuss it informally tonight, because like many listeners, I'm a Ledger person, and now this is just kind of me going, I think I've got to move.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This is again, like, we've had enough warning flags, right? They're massively into their shit coins. They lost all the customer data. These are like red flags, right? And then now they're pushing an update that could have completely created the type of security fault that is the worst thing they could do. Literally undermines the entire fucking device. And this is, and the co-founder was talking about this. You know, we've linked to a Reddit thing here where I think the guy was quite alarmist with this thing. I think potentially it's not as bad as it looks, but the fact that they could do this is the bad bit, right? But they're saying they wouldn't just have taken your shards. You had to subscribe to a service for like $9.99 a month to do this, and so you'd have to have made, you know, not just updating your firmware. Does it mean that your seed just gets sent out? But the problem is, by updating your firmware, it means it's possible for your firmware to get sent out if a subscription is fulfilled, and someone at Ledger's end could just click a box and go subscription fulfilled and then steal your private key.
Yeah, so we really can't update our software at the moment, can we?
Absolutely not. No,
definitely not.
You know, for me, I just don't see any other option apart from moving. Like I'm having a look at Trezor and Cold Card at the moment. So Cold Cards seem purely US. They're quite pricey. You got Trezor Model 1, which it seems like a bit of a budget version. So I'll probably need to have a look at the comparison, see what's out there. But yeah, I think there's going to be a few people moving and a few people listening. I know for certain who've got ledgers.
Yeah, the top two I would say would be is Cold Card, but then also Blockstream Jade. I've always wanted to get that device, and I haven't ever had a reason to do it. That's because Blockstream, that's the CEO is Adam Back, which was one of the very first people in Bitcoin.
Okay.
I think him and Hal Finney and Satoshi. Adam Back is he released, I think it was Hashcash before Bitcoin. So he's an absolute legend in the space. And I think in reality, like Blockstream Jade hasn't got much attention. But it's the reason why I say
it's
those
the first
two.
time I've heard of it.
It's quite cheap as well. Like it's the same kind of like price category as the Trezor.
Yeah.
So like the Cold Card is the one which I think we've spoken about before. But just for the listeners, you're looking at $147. So more expensive than the Ledger. The Trezor, you've got two different products, Trezor Model 1 and Trezor Model T. The Trezor Model T has a color screen, so you're paying 186, whereas the Model 1 you're paying 58. And the Jade, you're paying 58 again. So, you know, if you say my Jade's any good, I might get a couple.
Yeah. Well, and why I say it's that those two is they're Bitcoin only. The problem with Trezor is they support shitcoins. So
okay,
when you go Bitcoin only, you just know you're not getting a load of code that shouldn't be there. You don't. Every single line of code that shouldn't be there is a security risk. So
I do like the chart as well on the blockstream.com Jade, where it's got Jade versus Ledger Nano versus Cold Card MK4 and Trezor Model T.
Yeah, it's designed by someone that worked very closely with Satoshi, so he knows what's important in a hardware device. So that's how he designed it.
And there's a UK reseller, it's telling me, CryptoSteel, who sell Blockstream.
Oh, great! There you go.
So one for suggested was Amazon, but the problem is you'll end up with dodgy stores, and you don't want to get a compromised device.
No.
Buy it direct.
Do you not save a little bit of cash or shipping?
So I was just having a look on the website, 'cause I think it's one of the first things which I'll do after we've finished. And they've said local sellers. They've listed a load, and it's under Sword Limited, which redirects to CryptoSteel.
Oh, well, there you go. So yeah, because the problem is obviously when you buy a new hardware device, you're also going to have to buy some new backup words and all that stuff as well.
But don't worry, I've got a pack of those.
All right. Well, the good thing is if you buy enough CryptoSteel, obviously they sell steel that you can put your backup words.
Do you know what they sell as well?
What?
Prison safes.
Is it prison safe ones? Yeah.
And you don't just have to get one. You could get a pack of 5.
Ooh.
Put them all in.
Hold on. Do we need to change seed phrases?
Yep.
So this is again, a huge flaw where you think, okay, I've memorized.
Well, technically you don't. You could, if you wanted, you could use the same seed phrase on the new device. But the problem is that device, like you've still got a ledger with the same seed words on, so you still got the security risk. So you can move your Bitcoin and move it to any device you want. But if you don't trust Ledger, it's worth resetting, right? It just is. Because you're right, like, it is a potential cost and all that kind of stuff. And look, I might just do the Amazon thing, right? Just go on Amazon for the backup seed word thing. Like just get some nuts and bolts and just do it for 15 quid, because that bit doesn't matter, right? You just, all you need is the steel and you need an engraver, right? Or a stamp of some sort. So you can do that bit on the cheap because there's no security risk there.
Because I'm thinking my nice crypto tag, which I had,
useless. Yeah,
useless, gone.
Yeah.
Looking through CryptoSteel, it's saying it's a reseller, but I can't see it on their website. So if we know a UK reseller, would be a good one to pass around.
You'll have to search out because it's the
Right.
Jade is what I'm.
Yeah, otherwise
Yeah,
I'll
I
just
think
pay the
this is-
import. I'll pay the import tax because what is it, 20%? So if I buy two, I'll end up paying what, 20 to 25 pounds.
This is, live breaking news, which is pretty big. It's like we use these types of products and these services as the staple points when we're talking to people. So we talk about get a ledger, maybe use crypto tag as your backup, use Coinbase, those types of things where we believe that are safe, and we may have one of the pillars of our introduction to Bitcoin potentially flawed.
For you, Sir Neverlook, you've got one of the steel backups, haven't you? So you could just buy more sheets. So I think if you looked on Amazon, you'll be able to find something which would be similar in terms of how the sheets split out. For me, I went on to Tiny Seed and I bought a load of extra plates after I messed up one. So I've got my backups, and Mr. All In, I think he's got all kinds hidden around his estate.
Yeah, well, it is a pain in the ass. It's going to be a hassle.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to spend a few hours sorting this out.
Yeah, the good thing is, like, where I've hidden certain things, I can just fucking leave them there, right? Because once everything's moved, if anyone finds the old word, it's like, well done. You can recover my old Ledger wallet that has nothing in it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you'll be able to see the transaction history. You'd be like, fuck, this was valuable. But on this day, it all went out. And so you don't really want people finding stuff, because if they do know it's yours.
I was going to say they may spend their life working out how to have a time machine, go back in time, and become the $1 trillion man themselves.
What's worse, they might go and buy a $15 wrench, not $5 anymore, and come hunt me down anyway. In this time and space, not in previous time. But yeah, it's a pain in the ass when this stuff happens, real pain in the ass. But
yeah, I think this is the threat around Bitcoin, because there's always been the stuff around issues happening within the blockchain. But this is what really happens, is people fucking up with the devices. Yeah. So obviously this isn't going to be someone's fault, but this is something which is being exposed within software and hardware, which a lot of people use. So anyone who's heard about this, you've got to pay notice. You can't just sit here and go, might not happen to me. So it could be 5 years down the line. And of course, we won't get Argentina here, or won't we? But you may be in that situation where you're going, shit, I need that Bitcoin which I hodled.
Yeah. Well, imagine if, like how the SEC and the US government are always putting pressure on crypto companies and the exchanges. Imagine if Ledger ended up being pressured by the US government on something, because obviously they're also an American company, I'm pretty sure. Actually, might not be actually. But anyway, just to say any government is putting pressure on them because they know the majority of Bitcoin holders use Ledger. And now suddenly, if Ledger have access to private keys, if they passed a law that said you need to, like, basically the government is taking control of all the Bitcoin, then legally they might be able to pressure Ledger to just take everyone's Bitcoin and hold it and go, don't worry, you've got an IOU, like your Ledger still shows how much Bitcoin you've got. You just can't move it anymore because the government have confiscated it for now. And that's the problem, isn't it? Bitcoin can't be stolen from the blockchain directly, but when you put it on a device that's owned by a central company, if they shouldn't be able to do this. That's the whole point. I did not know this was the case. I did not think like Ledger could be taken by the US government and they could put their best hackers into that company. I did not think they could take my Bitcoin. This software update shows they absolutely could. They could sneak an update to me that essentially sends them my private keys, and then they have ownership of my Bitcoin and they could send it out. That is fucking terrifying. They should not be able to do that, which is why this whole story is just nuts.
So Ledger, founded in 2014, and they're a French company founded in Paris.
Yeah,
can't trust the French.
Man,
yeah, this is big.
It's a big one. I think I think there's got to be assurances about the other one, because I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'll get the Jade. Then I'm also thinking, what's to stop Jade from doing this?
Yeah, well, the good thing about them is I think they're based in Malta and they're owned by Adam Back, who is a Bitcoiner. So he is purposely moving that company into like various jurisdictions and stuff. So I think they're the least likely, but in reality, the only real reason or only way to be real sure is to run Bitcoin Core on your own air-gapped computer and create your own hardware wallet and generate your own keys. If I'm really being honest, that's probably what I need to do. Because then because you can, right? The way the devices work, it's a relatively simple program that it runs to take your keys and then to generate a private key for an address. You just got to be super fucking careful when you're doing it because it's very easy to leak that key onto a device that's connected to the internet and then someone can get it. So that's why at the moment I've trusted third parties to do it for me.
So if you did a air gap computer, so this is one not connected to the internet, you run Bitcoin Core, so you buy a specialist computer, get Bitcoin Core on it, never have it on the internet, generate your keys once you've got your Bitcoin on the computer, and then you stamp away on your crypto steel or whatever it is,
100%.
And then literally turn off your computer
or
you destroy it. So literally you've purely got your Bitcoin on the seed phrases. So for yourself, if we broke it down, into bits, you'd probably have about, I don't know, 1,000 different bits of steel lying around to divide the trillions.
But yeah, that's the way. Just thinking it through then, and people were talking about it in the comments actually.
So would you just get a cheap
computer? They were able to find like a cheap laptop for like $150. So it's not dissimilar to a hardware wallet cost. So you just need the cheapest of the cheap laptops, right? They don't need to do anything smart. And if anything,
you just get one with Windows on it or Linux or something.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Literally download Bitcoin Core onto some kind of like USB, keep it on there, and then once you've sanity checked the USB, move it onto the spare laptop to do all this.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the safest way to do it, and then you're trusting no one other than yourself.
It's a scary one. Very, very
This is a scary one. And, it's time for everyone to potentially look harder and further at these other wallets. I'm just looking back to when we were speaking about the Foundation hardware wallet on Pod 93. It looks a little bit like a phone, if you recall. That might now need to be considered.
Yeah. It's just funny, isn't it? Like how we've spoken about how Bitcoin needs to be more customer friendly and user friendly and all that stuff. And in reality, when you really think through the game theory of how Bitcoin's adoption probably is going to go, when you consider the government attacks that they're going to use to stop it, the weakest link is actually the hardware device. If they can get it from there, then that's how they claim the Bitcoin back, right? It's how they kill it. So actually, the most user-friendly option we have now, which isn't particularly user-friendly, a lot of people are scared of even using a ledger, right? I've spoken to so many people about ledgers.
But they leave it on the exchange. I don't want to use a ledger.
Yeah, they don't want to send it to their own device and have ownership of it and da-da-da. Like, no, I don't want that. And in reality, probably we've probably taken a huge step back here, which is probably a correct step back, which is you need to be buying an air-gapped computer to generate your own keys.
So just to jump on this one more. So one of the things which I like to do to check that I haven't lost all my bloody Bitcoin is check the balance on Ledger Live.
Yeah.
So if you do the air-gapped computer, how would you check your balance?
You can just use just put the amount of Bitcoin you have into any Bitcoin price tracker and it will just...
But it's more about checking that no one somehow has managed to steal it.
Oh, you could just type in the address then into a block explorer and see how much Bitcoin it's got on it.
Yeah, because really on Ledger Live, it's just showing you the amount of Bitcoin that you've got against the price of Bitcoin. It's not actually there. It's still on the blockchain, isn't it?
Yeah, you just need to figure out. Yeah,
it's checking your address.
there's an address that links to the, which is tied to the,
Maybe for
it's
I know
tougher to send
next.
it and stuff as well.
Yeah, maybe I know we've got Pod 99 coming up, but this definitely needs to be, well, in our group.
I think we
as
talk
we're,
about
as we're talking it out loud, come back with a plan for listeners and viewers, because I think that's the purpose of this pod. It's to distill and demystify what's going on in the world of Bitcoin to make it easy for people. And I always see it as, we should be your one-stop shop of what's going on, and obviously how to protect yourself. That's our role, in my mind, and the purpose of the pod.
Yeah.
So to be updated.
Oh man, I think we need to end the pod now. I need to go do some more.
Yeah, but you got time on your hands, and you're my go-to.
Yeah, we'll be asking you for the answers.
Yeah, when you buy your air-gapped computer, just get 2 more.
Yeah,
I think it's maybe breaking it into sections, isn't it? So it's like having some for convenience on like a Jade or a cold card, and then having some through the air gap computer. So it's like you've got your super secure, which may be a bit tricky, when you've got your stuff which is immediate access. So I think that's maybe a way for us to look at it as well, is break your sats Bitcoin apart and just have a certain amount on easy to access and a certain amount on air gap computer, or just steal in the end.
Yeah, and I think for anyone
probably worthwhile saying,
for me, hold on. Just very quickly, the one thing I think that I do have in my head right now is I want to get off Ledger.
Yeah.
So I think the quickest way of me doing that is to buy some Jades. So I'm going to buy some Jades, get it off onto that, and then longer term, I need to figure out how to generate my own keys.
We'll just have to have a discussion around if there's any UK shops or whether we're just going to pay the import tax.
Yeah. Again, put me down for 2.
Yeah, I'll be buying a couple as well.
Yeah. So I was going to say, for all listeners, it's probably worthwhile stating right now, do not update your ledger. Not only don't update your ledger, hold on to it, because this hasn't happened, which is also key to say. This hasn't happened, but it could be.
It hasn't happened to what we know.
Correct.
But the problem is, Ledger have admitted that they could push a software update that would take your private keys off your device.
Yeah.
That now means every hacker in the world is trying to get a software update to your Ledger and take your private keys.
So I suppose that's a risk when you boot it up, but it tries to update.
Yeah, you just have to say no. Yeah. And like we've said, anyone that's listening anyway, they should know. I always say never update when it tells you to update. It says, oh, you need to update. Don't wait 2 weeks at least. Let the fallout happen. Because normally the fallout isn't this quick. Because it's on this one, it's very obvious what the potential problem is. Whereas usually the update looks perfectly passive and fine. And it takes 2 weeks for people to realize, oh shit, there's a vulnerability. And some people lost some Bitcoin or whatever. So yeah, my standard message always is don't update when they tell you to update. But be the last person to update, because there's no fucking prizes for updating your ledger first. It just means that you're going to be first to potentially find the bug that results in you losing Bitcoin. So that's not really good. Anyway,
should we move on to Fiat Land?
Yeah, let's go on to Fiat Land.
There are some good stories this week.
Yeah, scary as well. This whole pod's fucking scary. I think this one. It's just not. It's a doom and gloom podcast this week.
So the first one is a tweet by, I think it's more a video, but our link is through to Dylan Leclerc, who is, I suppose, a journalist or a writer for Bitcoin magazine. And I had a bit of a look at who the hell this guy is because I was like, is he just a nobody?
No.
He's a member of Congress, so his name's Brad Sherman. And
We had him on last week. He's the same guy. He had it.
what
Yeah,
did we have
same
about
guy.
last week? I've completely wiped that from my brain.
We're America and we can do anything.
Oh no, that's this week.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Oh, this was in our
last-
group. That was it.
Last yeah. So last week it was he retweeted RFK saying that our Bitcoin's just for money laundering and criminals.
Oh, so he's trying to
That's
climb the government by peddling the line, but he's fucked up the line, hasn't he? So really interesting, this one, because it must only be about 10 seconds long, this clip. And it's him talking about crypto bros making money out of thin air. So he's saying they just make trillions out of thin air, these crypto bros. So I think he's bundled Bitcoiners and shitcoiners together. But then he says, but they'll argue, maybe you do with the US dollar. And maybe we do. But with the US government is what he ends it with. And you just kind of go, you just said it out loud, what you shouldn't say. And I think these two statements, he's been going, how can I lick some arsehole to make everyone super impressed with me? And he's done it 2 weeks in a row. And the last one with Kennedy, I think he hit the right note, didn't he? He's just belittling someone, saying he doesn't follow the script. Whereas this one, he's literally just let the cat out of the bag to the public. He has fucked up. If people see this, they'll be like, this guy's in government. Why is he saying we can print money out of thin air because we are the government? Yeah. That's not the line which they peddle. They peddle, we're borrowing, we're raising the debt ceiling. These are the lies which they tell in order to distract you and disorientate you. Whereas this is just pretty much admitting they're creating money. They're devaluing your assets. They're devaluing your salary. They're devaluing your cash. Everything. They're making you poorer. But they're the US government.
It's meant to be quantitative easing. We're stimulating the economy and other bullshit word salad terms that get away from creating money out of thin air. And yeah. And for anyone who doesn't believe us, we'll play it now.
Crypto bros make money literally by making money, and they've made over $1 trillion out of thin air. They'll accuse the U.S. government of making money out of thin air. Maybe we do, but we're the U.S. government.
There you go. And it's nuts. It's nuts that he said this out loud. And I think, yeah, I mean, you're right. I think he practiced this a little bit. He had obviously a longer statement he was going through. I think he just thought, oh yeah, this sounds really good because yeah, fuck America, yeah, we're fucking great. We can say this, and I think you can almost see in his face as he says it. You go, oh, that didn't really come out right. That sounds really bad. That's admitting something really dodgy. Whoopsie.
When you watch the video, I'm just looking at it. It's 10 seconds long, and it's that face on 9 seconds when he looks down, when he's just, oh shit, it's a realization. But while he's saying it, he's pulling this woke face like he's trying to impress all these people. Like,
he's loving it. Yeah, he's absolutely loving it, isn't he? He's like, oh, they print money out of thin air. And you'd think that you'd be like, oh, yeah, their pushback. You do that in the US dollar. And I'm expecting him to go, we don't do that. We just stimulate the economy. We keep people in jobs.
We borrow money.
We protect. And he just goes, yeah, we do it too. But we're allowed. You're like, oh, so you're literally you've lowered the US government down to a crypto bro and goes, yeah, but they've got the badge and you don't, so they're allowed and you're not. It's like, oh my word, it's a big admission. It won't matter, obviously, in the wider scheme of things, but it's funny watching. Like Mr. Sherman he's clearly fucking a little bit unhinged, and I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see very much of him soon. Because
I think it's just more he was trying to impress people. And he thought, he's putting on his like woke face, like you see these fucking morons when they're talking about whatever. They have that silly face of their mouth unhinged, and they've got the wild eyes. You see all these crazy people, and he's literally done that face. But then it's a realization, like, I fluffed the line. And like I said, these two last events were meant to catapult him further up into the government. Whereas, like you've just said, he's going to nowhere. He's pushing paper where people can't hear him.
Yeah, you can't admit that because the problem is I still think like most people don't think money printing is a real thing. I explain this to people sometimes, and they still think I'm talking a conspiracy theory when
Well,
I say governments print money out of thin air. They go, no, they don't. They like loan it from other governments and from banks, and no, they don't. They do loan some random money backs and forwards between countries and through banks, but that's just to further
I
inflate,
think
and that's the different scam. They do print money out of thin air and just add it to the supply and give it to themselves. They do that. And when you explain that to people, they go, that isn't how it works. They go, it is, that's inflation. No, inflation is when capitalists just put the prices up. Oh my God.
no, I think when you say it, initially people's minds think of that conveyor belt of money coming out, and that's the money being printed out of thin air. But really, I think you have to pick a different analogy of they're adding a zero onto the end of some Excel sheet and printing it that way.
But it's
And then it kind of shifts the visual mind's eye of money being printed.
But that
But
sounds even more improbable, though, right? It's
no, I
like,
think that's
that's
encouraging the conspiracy theories. I think it's
even though it happens.
oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I think-
because you're right. They don't even have to print the paper anymore. Like, at least they had to
Correct.
incur the cost of some paper and ink. Now,
Correct.
yeah, you're right. Now they just put a zero on the end of their balance sheet and go, there you go. That's how much money we got.
Yeah, because I was watching something and it literally is exactly that. It's like there is some balance sheet, and I say balance sheet loosely because it doesn't balance, of where someone is simply saying, how much are we going to add this quarter?
Yeah.
Done.
yeah, but I think it's just we need to probably come up with better terminology. Because I
Yeah.
think, I think back to myself, I knew what it was, I knew it existed, but somehow it just didn't register with my brain properly for years. And I knew
Because
we were
of-
fighting.
Yeah.
I knew we were fighting inflation with our investments, but it didn't register as bad. Why is it going on? And it's because I had so little understanding about the history of money and what money is. And I think that's what
Also
everyone
the
suffers with.
process.
Yeah, it makes you
It's
think.
the process of it, of like, well, okay, how does that happen? And who are these people? Because we still don't know who are these people that are adding the zeros to the balance sheet.
It's also just, looking and going, I earn, say, £10,000 a year. Okay, that's great. But this year, that can buy
dick.
on my OnlyFans.
Okay,
With
I
that
thought it needs to at
£10,000,
least give us one strike.
with that money, I can buy, I don't know, a microphone. I can buy a computer. I can buy this many groceries, which are broken
Leather
down into
chaps.
leather chaps, chicken breasts, and everything else. But then it's saying, well, in 5 years' time, it'll buy me this, and you're going, well, where's the leather chaps gone? You can no longer buy the leather chaps, and it's just that understanding. Whereas when we heard about inflation, we're like, oh, everything's getting a bit more expensive. It didn't. It was like, oh, it's a company, it's partially the government. It doesn't really matter. But then you actually go back into the history of money, and this is why, when I'm talking to anyone, I do recommend them to read the Bitcoin Standard. I said it doesn't matter if you don't finish it; just read the first 100 pages.
Yeah,
because that is what will make you understand what's going on when you actually acknowledge there's an issue.
Because I think we're literally taught that inflation is a bit like gravity. You don't need to understand why we stand on the floor, and when you throw a ball up, it falls to the ground. It just is, right? And I think we get taught as kids that things inflate by 2 to 5% every year. It's like gravity.
Well, it's 2 to 3, but don't worry, it'll be 4 to 5 soon to make sure we do stimulate the economy.
It might be 20, but who knows? But it's just this is like gravity. That for human society to function, we have to inflate the money. It's science. It's like the law of gravity. It's like water. It's a fact. And I think that's why when I talk about inflation and money printing to people, and they go, no, it's quantitative easing, you go, Would that they're all just posh words for money printing. Until today, they've never really said we just print money out of thin air, out of nothing. They normally have some type of convoluted word salad that goes, there's loans here, quantity of easing there, we stimulate this, we chuff the balls of this. And it's all just, oh, right. So the average person goes, oh, that is all absolutely necessary. And I'm not smart enough to know that is what it takes to keep an economy growing and for human life to evolve and progress the way we want it to. But so I just think, it's just another little spike into that. It breaks their matrix and they don't like it, which is why I've had so many frosty conversations about that with fiat bros that do not want to accept even that inflation is money printing out of thin air. And that's a very simple thing to just have to admit. I'm not even pushing into Bitcoin, not pushing to anything. But just you understand money printing. And even when you explain it, they reject you outright and come aggressive at you and go, you don't understand this. Oh, okay.
It's funny, like, I think it's almost like in an ideal society, you'd be taught a number of things at school. So obviously read and write, but it'd also be finances, history of money. But then it's also like investments. You've got to know how to retire. Like this is basic 101 stuff, which you should be taught before you're 18 if we're going to have a proper education system, but we're not. And I think it's, something which
I don't want you to retire.
Well, that's why
the narrative is we want to increase the age of you working. So
no, that's because everyone enjoys working so much.
It gives you a purpose in life. Lol. But my counter to you slightly would just be on a Bitcoin standard. You don't need to do most of that because money actually functions as money. So all you need to understand is basic maths of how many Satoshis buy a loaf of bread and all that. You don't need to learn investment and how to.
But it is also
inflation because there is no inflation.
You're going to retire when you're 65 or whatever, and your average lifespan will be say 85. So you've got 20 years. Therefore, you need to save X amount per year. And it's building a budget. So it's basic understanding of that, which is what I think needs to be taught in a Bitcoin standard. But, I was having a conversation with someone today about investments, and they're talking about using managed funds. And I was like, if you use managed funds, you're paying 2% for management fee per year, 2 to 3. You're also paying 1% or 2 on pay-ins. And then you're also paying an initial advice fee of something like 5 to 10%. So you stack all that up. And literally, when you put it on, say, a 10 grand investment, you're losing so much you can't meet the market. And they said, I understand that. But I was like, you don't, because you keep on talking about it. Yeah. And it's just like,
all they're going to do is put it into a fund that tracks the market. Just do it yourself.
I said, if you want to have a fund which is balanced like one of these companies, put it for a Vanguard. That's like, I don't think it's the right way. But you can get the same for 0.2% instead of potentially 3-4% per year. And that is thousands upon thousands of pounds, which you'll get screwed out of. And people don't understand that.
That's the whole thing about compound interest and stuff. Yeah, that 1% means that in 20 years, you didn't get any gains on that 1%. Every year, it's just to go eroding away. So when you work out how much 1% fees is over a 20, 30-year period, yeah, it's literally like 70% of the potential gains just gets eroded in fees because so much of your overall stack is being eroded away.
I even put an example.
This is the thing, people shouldn't need to do this stuff. That's my main point. Because it is hard. It took us quite a while to figure this stuff out, right? We were still trying to hunt on various things, research companies, and obviously we want to do this, and we spent a serious amount of time on it. We're not the average person, right? We're very focused on this. When I look at mums and dads and the typical, they shouldn't need to do this, which is why on a Bitcoin standard you don't. And because it is tough and it forces people to have to go into the markets and start to gamble. And in reality, most people are not confident doing that, which is why the financial advisors and all these management companies make shit tons of money. And literally all they end up doing is put it in the Vanguard anyway.
Yeah,
they charge 1% for the luxury of it.
That's pretty much my point. You say your risk category, you put your kind of split, whether it's international, domestic. Hey presto, it's the same thing as you would get for a couple of %. And I even, as I love, put it in a spreadsheet for them and said, here is your typical investment, here is your Vanguard. And there's something like, I think I put it for £10,000 for, and you're losing £4,000 to £5,000 on an investment company, a managed fund, over a Vanguard.
Over what period of time?
10 years.
Yeah.
And if you put that onto 100 grand, 200 grand, tens and tens of thousands of pounds. So
yeah. And that's on a Vanguard as well. That's just, that's why you just want to shortcut everyone to go, look, you need to fucking buy Bitcoin, you need to take custody. But it's just fucking hard getting people that way.
I think it is like that journey though. Like the reason why I throw this in, because you got the journey, it's understanding money, it's understanding the basics, it's going move away from these managed funds. Then after that, follow the market. Then after that, start looking at things like Bitcoin and what money actually is. But it does help to build that base where you actually go, I know what money is. And I start to understand things like compound interest. But if you ask everyone...
these building blocks are difficult though. And I guess also you have to kind of make the mistakes along the way before you get to that.
We've speculated on some right shit,
haven't we? Solution straight away. Very rarely will anyone. I was listening to a podcast about Warren Buffett, and he basically says, I've only made in my lifetime, and he's, getting to 12 good decisions in terms of his investments. And then when you map it back, and these guys talk literally matter of fact. And so, you can track the Geicos, the American Airlines, the Coca-Colas, the Apples, the Bank of America.
I think a big one.
There's a lot of other trades in there that are actually pretty shit.
I think one of his big ones was Washington Post, wasn't it? Originally, that was one of the ones that really got him going.
Yeah,
but yeah, you're right. You make a lot of mistakes, because I thought at first, speculating on things. I think we all put into a certain company which went to shit, into liquidation. And I did a couple of those, only £50 or something, or £100, but I lost every single one of them because it was pure and utter gambling, degenerate gambling. And you do have to make mistakes, but also all of this is inconvenient. It's hard. You don't want to do it. You don't want to disconnect from the matrix. It hurts.
Time-consuming mentally.
Yeah, you end up reviewing everything.
Hurts my head.
And I'm I'm still planning for a fiat retirement because I can't bank on Bitcoin. I want to be able to, but I've also got to be able to retire in fiat land just in case. And so I have to do all this, and it's inconvenient. It's hard. It's horrible. I know I can't give my money to a fund manager because I know they'll be massively under inflation. They won't meet the market. And so I have to look at what the alternatives are, and it is inconvenient and hard as hell.
Just make sure you only invest as much fiat as you're willing to lose. The safe play is Bitcoin, but if you want to be risky and stay in fiat, then okay. Only risk as much as you're willing to lose.
Well, I think that brings us on nicely to our next story, doesn't it?
It does indeed.
So this is, I don't know if this is more horrible or less horrible than the last story.
This is way worse, because this isn't someone misspeaking and going, oh shit, that came across wrong. She thinks this came across great.
This is hey guys, I've got a great idea that I want to share with you, and I'm on public TV, and I've had previous, and please listen to what I'm about to say. So the name of this woman is
Chrystia Freeland.
Yes. And she's telling Canadian citizens that have worked and saved money that's in their banks to spend that money.
Well, these are quite well-off households, though, aren't they, is what she said.
Correct, yeah.
And they've saved it because they didn't have a lot to do during the lockdowns and pandemics.
This is just... Yeah, so actually, what I'll do, I'll play the clip.
Yeah.
Right there with this notion of the spending, because you allude to it in your fiscal update. The language seems to me to be important. Smart, targeted. These are words that suggest you want to make very careful, kind of incisive spending on the government's part to get the economy going. What might that look like? Can you give us any detail?
Well, it's great to be with you, Amanda. And I want to thank you, first of all, for really zeroing in on the preloaded stimulus idea. None of us have a crystal ball, but economists like Ben, like Doug, have been pointing out that some Canadian households, and it tends to be the better off households, do have quite a lot of money that they've saved because there hasn't been that much to do in the pandemic. And certainly it would be great if that money could go towards driving our recovery. And I want to make an offer now to all of your listeners. If people have ideas on how the government can act to help unlock that preloaded stimulus, I am very, very interested. Maybe, as Doug Porter was suggesting, it happens by itself. That's the best case scenario for me. But if people have ideas on how we can really, try to unleash that, and particularly unleash it in the parts of the Canadian economy that really need support, tourism, hospitality, domestic services, let me know.
So what she talks about is the whole unlocked stimulus, which
No, it's not
is
unlocked,
hilarious, right? Because normally stimulus, right?
Preloaded
Preloaded.
stimulus.
It's even better.
Oh, preloaded
unlocked.
stimulus. Oh yeah, preloaded stimulus. Yeah, it's on there. I must have just
Preloaded
typed it wrong.
stimulus.
So normally, like stimulus, that wasn't even really a word, was it? Since lockdowns. So they printed money out of thin air to give people stimmy checks, right? Because they locked down the economy, forced everyone to stay at home, so they had to give out money. So they're now calling. Essentially, there's a middle of Canadian people, but they say, oh, they have quite a lot of money since lockdown, and so we're calling this a preloaded stimulus. There's like middle Canada have all this money in bank accounts. We can see it because we've looked. These people have money, and we don't really think.
The Canadian government can't do anything with bank accounts. They're completely safe from the Canadian government.
And they didn't freeze Canadian protesters and anyone connected to the protesters when they did protest, and then they did freeze bank accounts. But yeah, they definitely cannot do that.
That never happened.
No, that's just a conspiracy theory. So she's now talking about going
pods on your favorite Bitcoin podcast, the 4 Ps.
But it's bizarre this because she's talking about going, we need to unlock this preloaded stimulus. And this is middle America. There's actually some people in Canada that have a bit of money left. And she's going, yeah, the economy is completely collapsing. Our health service is collapsing. Education is collapsing. So the way to fix that is, the couple of people that actually have like 10 to 100K or whatever in their bank, probably because they've worked the majority of their life and actually been frugal and saved some. We need to unlock that and make sure it cascades down.
And this is on the back of probably inflation over the last 2-3 years, around about 30 to 40%.
Yeah. And she has I love the gall she has, right? I think she thinks she's on some kids show where she's like, oh, let's be inclusive to all the kids. She goes, I don't have all the best ideas of how to do this. Hopefully it just happens naturally, i.e. all these people lose their money somehow. But
that was a great one. She said, if people have ideas about how to unlock the preloaded stimulus, then let us know.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Like, you can just imagine like little Jimmy, 7 years old, going, why don't anyone with a bank account with 100 grand just take half of it? Well done, Jimmy. You win the award. We're going with that one.
Yeah.
Like, what is she fucking talking about? You go, hold on, you're employed apparently to be some kind of finance minister or whatever for the Canadian government, and you're asking the people how to steal from the people and redistribute that money.
So this is in like a Soviet bloc, like an old Eastern European, like Belarus, like a communist country, isn't it?
Well, you'd like to think that, but it's like before our very eyes, Canada is transforming.
But they're trying to be like nice socialist, because this is socialism or / communism, right?
Well, I was going to say, when have socialists actually been nice?
Yeah.
It's what we like to pretend, but it turns deadly. And what's the correct word for it? Or I can never say it. Authoritarian. Yeah, it always goes the same way.
Yeah, but they're trying to almost go, no, we're going to put it out to a vote. Like, how do you want us to steal your money? and then we'll put it up for a vote. It's democracy. That you voted A, B, or C. How do you want
this is
to your money? And it's just going to be some form of taxation, some form of just taking money and just targeting people that have actually survived lockdown. They're trying to get them and drive
and
them
also
further into the dirt.
Justin Trudeau has been, what's the correct word? I suppose it's not ring fencing, but I suppose ring fencing is not being allowing the companies and Canadian companies to use natural resources. So he's kind of been squeezed them tight, as well as their property prices have gone through the roof. So the middle and lower class have been squeezed. So I think it pretty much is a play to the lower class to say there's people better off than you. Take their money, and it will go towards the recovery. Whereas I think, I think about this all the time about houses and how they become, I suppose they're almost speculative assets. Whereas in a Bitcoin standard, it isn't so, because, my house, which I bought, it'll be the same price within 10, 20 years. I'm not thinking, oh, it's an up and coming area, it'll be worth 200% within 10 years. It's literally, it's my house, I live in here. It's worth what the bricks are worth and what the land is worth to people. But also,
a lot of people get tricked by property anyway, because they think the price of the property goes up, but really it's just inflation.
Yeah. And also, people won't be looking at houses for rentals as much, and because everyone will be like, well, I don't have to stick my money in rentals because I'm not getting buggered by inflation. So I can just keep it in Bitcoin. So I think it solves a number of issues when you move to a Bitcoin standard. But I suppose that's a little bit of a diversion of this one. But my kind of main thought about this is it's kind of like communism or socialism. It isn't yours. It's actually everyone's. Well, actually, it's not everyone's. It's the government's. And literally, it's a chain of thought, and you're kind of going, they're pushing them fully into socialism or communism, whatever you want to call it, and it's horrible. Like that, they surely got to be the next Argentina. Are they in a shitter state as the UK?
Well, last time we looked at Canada, I know that they had very, very little gold.
They have a lot of natural gas and oil, which they do not mine.
Yeah, they've got exactly that. So, they've got things that they could export. And as a country, I know they're fairly well off because the prices in Canada are extortionate.
Canada are absolutely fine. None of this is an accident. None of this is a mistake. None of this will lead to them being Argentina. This is purely, they are the WEF focus group. They want a Western country that is the test bed. They test stuff in Canada, and they see how it goes down. They see the reaction, and then they go, all right, learn from that. That's how we fix it. And at the moment, what they're trialing here is socialism via a primary school teacher. Do they accept it if we do it this way? And if they get this through and they manage to get people to fucking ring in and go, oh, I think you should do this. And she goes back online going, so kids, today we had some great idea from Mickey in Shrewsbury. And she suggested this tax. So we're going to roll it out.
And we're going to ignore Mr. All In, who rang up and said, fuck off.
Yes, we had one viewer who we had to ban.
Yeah, and they'll be processed.
Yeah,
and sent to the happy camp.
So I think that's what this is. This is very deliberate. We know
Trudeau
is a child of the WEF. We know the Canadian government they did lockdown.
He's not a child of the WEF. Castro was never in the WEF. What's, I suppose, the most damning thing about this is the last story was just some congressman from California. This is the deputy prime minister and finance minister of Canada. So it's not just a no mark. This is someone who's very briefed and is trusted to say exactly what the government wants.
Yeah. It's
scary.
And if you, and like I say, like the average person reading that will just go, "Oh right, yeah, that makes sense. The country is struggling. We are trying to recover from from the lockdown and from the pandemic. So yeah, maybe we do need to share a little bit of money around. And maybe there are some creative ways of getting people to spend more to help all these people that are in need. And you go, no, that's the message they want you to hear. In reality, they're going, we're going to steal money from these people and we're going to say we're going to give it to the needy. Guess where it really ends up? In government pockets.
And then you'll be begging for more government.
Yeah, and they might give out a little fucking stimmy check at the end of it. But I can guarantee for every $1,000 they steal, they'll give out 100, if that, as always. And I think they're testing it. They're testing it to go, does this approach work? Is this a good way to get socialism/communism into a Western country? And they're seeing if it works. So
by collapsing a country.
Well, the thing is, like, it wouldn't necessarily collapse them. It would just allow them to steal a load of money and keep people further entrenched, right? And we know this. Like they need to do this at some point. This whole plan, like we know, fiat is going to hit hyper inflation, and the money is going to be worth zero. So they need a way of getting us all onto socialism where we rely on government handouts before that happens. If they don't, then they lose. So this is going to happen. This at the moment, I think this is the carrot, and the next one that comes is a stick, which is do it or you get put in prison. And I think that essentially was the pandemic. The pandemic was a bit of the stick one. Break this rule, don't wear a mask, don't get vaccinated, all these punishments come your way. They're trying a little bit of softly over in Canada now, going, oh, how do you think we should tax you better? And they're being nice about it. Literally, the deputy prime minister there's going, I don't know. I'd love your thoughts.
I mean, looking at some...
How about you...
Do you think Canada would be so bold as to give people with a certain amount of money in their bank accounts haircuts?
I know. It's nuts, isn't it? And they're on TV doing it right now.
I was going to say, that's exactly what she's proposing.
That's what she's proposing. So would they go as far as just doing it?
Oh yeah,
I'd hope we'd have
absolutely
protests.
They could just do it, but they don't want the reaction that comes. They don't want civil unrest, so they want to. They're just testing it. They're literally, this is like an A/B test. They're going, oh, we could do it by force and just say we have to do this and bring out new taxes to pay for a pandemic, or they could do it softly and go, oh, what ideas have you got? Put a primary school teacher at the face of it going, look, she wouldn't lie to you. Look, she freaking teaches 5-year-old kids in the week, and she's just running the economy on as a side hustle. So she wouldn't try and scam you, and just trust her. She's doing finger paintings at 2.
What? I've just read Saifedean's comment. Today's Bitcoin's advertisement comes from a granddaughter of a Nazi looking for ways to unleash your savings. I wonder, is she actually?
I didn't know if that comment was relating to... Because the problem is there's freaking lots of Nazis around, depending on whether you want to call a government official a Nazi or an actual Nazi.
So her mother is Ukrainian and her father is Canadian, so I don't know if that's a kind of like link.
Yes, Saifedean being Saifedean, I think, but that's our second strike at least. So we get our third before we end.
I'm sure we can.
Oh no, here we go. Christina Freeland's grandfather's Nazi past.
There you go.
Christina Freeland's granddad was indeed a Nazi collaborator. So yeah, he's actually telling the truth, because usually he doesn't just say it for no reason.
Yeah. All right, sweet. This is actually just a random story, isn't it? It's never look. You got an Apple story here.
Yeah. So sorry, my notes just went off. So I'll just put it up on here.
I can intro it for you whilst you find it.
Yeah, intro it and then put it here.
So basically, it's that Apple now allow. Well, they've got a bank account. Essentially, Apple have launched a bank account, and they've gone off to a rocket start. They've got $1 billion in deposits within a week. So they've partnered with Goldman Sachs, and they're offering 4.15% annual return, which I think is pretty much market leading. So surprise, surprise, with the brand of Apple and the percentage of 4.15%, they've got a load of money in there. So no big surprise. But it's not really an Apple bank when you really look at it. It's a Goldman Sachs bank. So
Correct.
the argument would be if Goldman Sachs go bust, then Apple their bank would go bust. But who knows? Maybe an Apple bank account with Goldman is better, because if Goldman go bust, potentially there's only a couple of companies in the world that could bankroll that, and Apple would be one of them. I'd say like Google
I think it's
would
just
be the other. But
I think the other angle on is it's just centralization of banks as well to the few.
Yeah.
Well, we've always known that Apple have wanted to become a bank. And so what better way than to, go into partnership with a bank that's already got all of the infrastructure there, but coupled with the Apple branding. And obviously, as we've seen, anything that Apple do, people will follow. And so the masses have done so. But ultimately, it's still a bank at the end of the day. And once you've given your money to them, don't forget the same business that has got billions just sat around lying in cash. Now we've got more deposits. And so it worries me even more that, again, people will just sleepwalk into this.
In this modern day and age, I know you say like it makes sense that they partner with one of the largest banks in the world, but Apple, as far as I've known them, they love to just own everything end to end. Yeah, even down to the manufacturing and everything. If they don't want to rely on any supplier too much, building a bank in this day and age is not actually that hard. It probably costs you 10, 20 million to build a bank from scratch, to go through all the regulatory compliance and build various products. That they spend that every half an hour at Apple. So if they wanted to build their own bank inside Apple, they could have done it within 6 months. Because who's going to reject the banking license from Apple? They're not. They'll just get it steamrolled through. So, and obviously, like the main benefit of owning the bank is being able to invest the deposits that are there and obviously collect the fees. And by having Goldman Sachs in there, well, I'd imagine they're taking the lion's share of that, because that's what they're there for, right? So Apple was just probably taking some type of percentage of it, but they could have had 100%. And that money might end up being billions and billions worth of fees and potential investment money that they're going to have to split to some degree with Goldman Sachs. Whereas they could have spent 100 million. Let's just say they spent $1 billion on building a bank, which is just nuts. They'd have made that money back within a couple of years. And then from then on, it's 100% their money, because all the infrastructure costs are paid for. Because as we know, like building a little fintech bank now, it isn't like it's 1980 anymore, where it does cost insane money and takes you 10 years to build a bank. Anyone can build a bank now. The biggest overhead really is compliance staff and getting through the regulatory hurdles. Apple have the largest compliance and legal team in the fucking world.
Maybe it's a limitation by the US government to stop them.
To me, it looks fucking dodgy, is what it looks like. I think your point, Dr. Evil, was on point, which it's the consolidation. I think they're just going, oh yeah, let's launch Apple. They can have a bank. Yeah. But they just shoved all the money into one of the big 5 banks anyway. The money has not moved. It's still in the same.
But it's also, if you look at Apple, so maybe the US government restricts them, but it may also be looking at a different play. Just having a quick look at the worth of the companies, Apple's worth trillions, whereas Goldman Sachs is worth, 106 billion?
Well, Apple's one of the largest.
Yeah, so Apple could literally just eat Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, which is why like them partnering with them is weird, because it's like they could have built a Goldman Sachs in a year. I think I think they're doing it bit by bit, because I think they've been restricted by the US government. Yeah, which is exactly what I would think as well. And why would they restrict them? They don't want Apple to be a proper bank, because they could be too powerful and actually challenge the US government. So they want to funnel all the money that Apple make into a controlled asset, which is Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, exactly like Facebook and Libra, isn't it?
Yeah.
But also everyone raves on about this 4.15% return. It's just like, oh, that's great against 30%.
It's funny.
Yeah.
It's just because everyone's used to like 0.15. You're going, oh wow, 4.15. It's like, yeah, well, yeah, inflation is tripled, if not quadrupled.
Yeah,
So,
what's the interest rate in America? 5%, and they're having like the big panic. Do you know what they're proposing the interest rate to be in Argentina?
and it's got to be at least 6 or 7, I guess.
No, I read something today, 97%.
Oh, it's
Stop it.
annual. It's annual, yeah, 97. Yeah, that would make sense, yeah, because their actual inflation is our next story. It's 109. So that's perfect. Yeah, you only lose 10%.
Yeah, sounds ideal. So the next story, so start it off. The region's number 2 economy, a former top 10 of the world in economy size, a massive grain exporter or farming exporter, and now their inflation's getting worse than expected. So how can it get worse than expected in Argentina, you may ask? Well, what was the forecast? I think they were saying it would just be, what was it, under 100%? Whereas it's hit 109% within a year.
109. Yeah.
And looking at this, so we talked about it last week where I think it was a couple percent. To put this into a nicer view, it's only 1.3% over a week. So don't worry. So it's gone, I think, by 3 pesos to the US dollar. And as we know, the US dollar has got inflation issues at the moment, so it's probably not the best gauge to judge it by. So getting 1.3% against the dollar is maybe a little bit problematic. And they posted 8.4% monthly inflation in April, well above the annual forecast of 7.5%. And that's monthly. So monthly. So times it by 12. When you're thinking, oh, 8% isn't that bad. We're about the same in the UK. No, we're not. That's over a year. This is in a month. And also that's a live figure. Treble it to get the real figure. So they're about 300% over a year. They're probably 24% over a month. And it's saying that it's pushed 1 in 4 people into poverty. There's someone talking about the market. When I came last time to the market, I paid 300 pesos a kilo for bell peppers. It's 300 pesos for a half kilo now. So that's, I took that as a weekly shop from someone called Olivia, who's a retiree. She's gone on to say these are the governments we have, and we, the citizens, must think because we are the ones who give them our votes. I've stopped going out to eat once a month. We haven't been on vacation anywhere. No, sorry, that's my next one. I was just going to say they're saying I stopped going out to eat once a month. We haven't been on vacation anywhere for 4 years. We've had to sell the car because we couldn't pay insurance, licenses, and garage costs. So that's someone who's a graphic worker, Salvador, who's 64. And it's just like you're hearing all these little points. I'm kind of going, this is starting to happen in the UK.
Yeah.
People aren't able to go on holiday. People aren't able to eat out. People are having to get rid of a car in the household and rely upon just one. They're having to leave their cars to go into disrepair. And I'm kind of going, this is all the hallmarks are starting to happen within the UK, aren't they? And then they say, we use little air conditioning, heating. Everyone cuts back on these habits to make ends meet. What if we just had this winter? Everyone was cutting back on their heating so they couldn't afford it. But it's only Argentina, isn't it?
Yeah, the most heartbreaking thing when I was reading that was the fact that the person that's talking here seems to be taking some form of accountability. They're going, these are the governments we have, and we, the citizens, must think because we are the ones who give them our votes. And it's just so heartbreaking to see that kind of comment coming from this 70-year-old retiree that now can't afford to buy peppers down the market, because it's so shameful that like the politicians make them think that, well, you voted us in, and you go, no, they're all the fucking same, Olivia. They're all the same. They all would have done this. every single government around the world is doing the same thing. It's just that your government has run out of runway and they're going to hyperinflation now. Every country is going to do the same thing. All the governments are doing the same thing. Fiat standard is broken. It's not your fault. You didn't vote in the wrong people. They were all wrong. Do not take any accountability for the government's actions here.
I think Argentina are just 20, 30 years ahead of the trend, because I think they started to go to shit in the 40s or 50s. So I think
I know we've had Argentina on the show every week for the last couple of weeks, but there will be another. Maybe there is another country, but I think everything that's playing out may take about 3 to 5 years to then play out here. Because you're right, everything that's happening there is also happening here, just on a smaller scale.
Yeah, it's just less people. It's not 1 in 4 yet. I'd say it's a lot smaller, but it is
flying better here. That they're saying our inflation is like 10, 15. We know it's near 100 now in the UK now. Inflation is near 100%, which is why when I see 109% inflation in Argentina over a year ago, it's not that much. You know, or our costs have doubled. That's 100%. But like you said, like really, the CPI level is probably 2 or 3 times less than what it should be. So really, inflation in Argentina is probably near 300%, and ours isn't 20; it is 100. I know that my food and average bill is doubled in the last year. My energy bills have doubled.
I think the energy's certainly, like, if we had a true CPI, you know, like on things like mortgages, energy, food, I think food's gone up by about 30%. Energy's gone up by, what is it, 200, 250%?
Try and buy fruit and veg now. It's expensive as fuck.
Yeah, I want to say it's 30% noticeable. Like, so much I noticed just going for a meal, just anywhere, not somewhere posh. Meals which should be, I don't know, £15, they're now 20. Things which were £12, you know, are now up to 15, 16. So everything has shot up, and I think that's really noticeable as well. But I suppose with that 30%, which I'm trying to quote there, the thing which is probably keeping it down is the wages, because the wages haven't gone up that much. So the food could be even more for the restaurant.
Yeah, but it's sad.
Yeah,
I mean, it's more Argentina from the side, but it's just like, yeah, they're just a South American country, just a small country. But like you said, they used to be top 10, and they're not anymore. And when you see it on the ground, like these people being interviewed, they just can't afford to put in their life, it's air conditioning, and they can't afford to buy food, and it's just sad. And we know that there's nothing coming to save them. Their 100% inflation that they're seeing now is the best it's going to be over the next 10 years. It's only getting
and they're being locked out of Bitcoin. I think they're being forced out of the US dollar as well. So they can't get into anything remotely safe from their view. And it's happening in every single country. You know, we talked about Canada tonight. We talked about the US. We've just talked about the UK. It's happening in the top 10 as well. It's just not as bad as Argentina. Argentina is going to burn badly soon. And I think they're just going to try and move us onto a CBDC with UBI and God knows what else. And yeah, socialism at this rate. I just can't see any way around it. But Bitcoin.
Yeah. This is what I always think of. I'm like, just give me another answer. Give me another answer, because otherwise everything just always points to Bitcoin, which Mr. All-In happily loves and set there. But I'm like, you know, what are the non-coiners thinking?
It is all doom and gloom, which we're coming up in this pod, which is a bit of a shame. But I suppose it is, was it the night is darkest before the dawn?
I think we're overseeing the fall of one form of money and the rise of another. So yeah, like today was like pretty much a fiat episode. So of course it's going to be doom and gloom. It's going to be fucking miserable. But once we get onto Bitcoin stuff, which we'll have shit tons of Bitcoin stuff next week after Bitcoin conference, that's all going to be shining lights and fucking the promise of a brighter future. But whenever we cover fiat, there are no fucking good feel stories out there. It's all doom and gloom. Because
But what about Canada's deputy prime minister? So they just want to help the economy recover,
I don't know.
and we should share on what the middle of earns and saved.
I'd only believe her if she was a tranny.
That's our third strike.
If she pulls up her dress and's got a massive fucking slong there, she can tax me as much as she wants.
We don't even have any good news, do we, to end on?
I was going to say that's literally it. I think Mr. All-In just put the final note, but he wants to see some schlong.
The good note is that it's Bitcoin 2023 in 2 days, and we'll see what Orange Coin has to deliver for us.
Yeah,
And we're a year away from the halving as well, which is a big one in my mind. Like whilst I've been through technically a halving before, not properly.
Yeah,
I'd say this is my first proper one. The first one just breezed me by when Mr. All was spamming our WhatsApp group saying buy Bitcoin, it's a halving. And I was like, shut up. I've got some. That'll do.
$20.
I think the halving, when it comes, by the way, will come. And as always with Bitcoin, it won't happen when we want it to happen. In terms of a big boost, it's not going to be like, oh, yeah, great, we're down to 3.25. It'll just be, okay, yeah, great. It's 3.125, isn't it?
I feel like it's more about a little bit about bull market. Whenever everyone gets a bit excited, it's like, what's the next stage? It's not so much about the money, because I'm not going to sell. It's more about what's the after events. You think what's followed the last bull market, and it was El Salvador, Central African Republic. There was some places like Madeira and some weird island, which I can't remember the name of South America, in terms of adoption. And then there's been all the kind of like developments around the hardware wallets, some of the software, the Lightning Network, which Michael Saylor's brought in. It's that kind of like next stage of evolution. Like I'm waiting to see what's happened, what's the next purpose. I feel like the next 4 years have got to be big, because fiat's really starting to crack. What's going to be that big move?
Well, that's a good place to end us right there. So thank you, Dr. Evil 10%, aka the People's Champ, Mr. All-In, aka the $1 Trillion Man, myself, Sir Neverlook, aka the Excellence of Execution, and surprise, surprise, she was here, but she's never here, Mrs. No Show. Still, Mrs. No Show. That's been Pod 98, brought to you by the 4Bs. Peace.